Hey guys, what is going on? It's Fen here. So today we're going to be doing a tutorial, and this is going to be on my new channel. Now, if you don't know, I run another YouTube channel, and that is mainly for gaming. I do gameplay commentaries and all that kind of stuff. But you know, on occasion I like to do tutorials. And I thought I would start off with my first tutorial on my new channel, which is going to be based around Cinema 4D, that kind of thing. And just do some tutorials for you guys. So if you want to learn, then here's a good place as any to learn. So today we're going to be making this, which is basically a fractured text object, and it's very easy to make. It might look complicated here, but it's actually very easy to make. If you follow my steps, you will learn it, and then you can actually adapt this to your own method, and you can just basically do anything. You can make this look whatever you want it to be. You can add different objects to, fracture even more objects, small objects, make it look like it's exploding. There's so many things you can do with this, but this is the basics. So let's get started, and I'll just take you through the scene that I have here, and I'm going to show you basically the scene setup. We have our text here. Now the viewport is very, very slow, and that's because of the amount of objects we have here. I'd say about 70% of these objects you're not even actually seeing because they're inside, but still, because we're fractured it, we need them objects. The top of the eye is a good example. There's so many items here. It's very laggy, as you can see when I'm rotating, and this is one of the things you do have to be careful of. If you fracture objects too much, your scene is going to be extremely laggy, and it's good idea to do frequent saves, just so you can actually go back if your Cinema 4D does actually crash. So we've got our text, we've fractured it, we've got a camera, we've got 2 lights just to give it a bit of oomph, and then we also have a HDRI image which will be supplied for you guys. And basically this is going to give us a really nice highlights on the beveled edges. So without further ado, let's talk about the items you're going to need. So as I talked about, it's the Cinema 4D you're going to need, of course. You're going to need the HDRI image, which is here, which I will supply. And you also need a Frowsy. Now Frowsy is a fracturing program. It just basically cuts meshes, and then it will basically add dynamic tags and all that kind of stuff for you. And it also adds materials to the specific places, such as the inner parts of the broken object and the outer, so you have 2 materials, because this is mainly used for like breaking rocks and that type of thing. You need to go here to nitro4d.com. It's a free plugin. Now I do recommend checking out this website because they do have some really good stuff, and a Frowsy is a really good one as well, and it's actually free. So make sure you download this and donate if you feel like you want to donate, because it's always nicer to support them people who make awesome plugins. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically go to File, New. We're going to make a new one, and then I'm going to go over here, and I'm actually just going to close this scene. I'm going to save it, and then our system should be running a lot smoother now. So the first thing we need to do is create a text object. Now there's many ways you can make a text object, but the way we're going to be doing it is going to go to MoGraph. I'm going to go to More Text. It's basically just a simpler way of creating text. So we're going to put something in here. It can be anything you want, your name, your channel name, whatevs. I'm just going to put Fenix in here because that's my name. I'm going to change the font. Now this will really look good depending on what font you use. I've recently reformatted, so I don't have any fonts. I've only got this font here, which I used in the tutorial. So I'm going to use this. I'm just going to spread it out a tiny bit because I want a little bit of space in here for the fracture to be able to fracture. I'm going to move it into the center, or best I can to the center of this scene. And there we go. So let's make the depth a little bit bigger. Let's put it something like 50. It doesn't really matter how big it is. But of course, the more depth, the cooler it's going to look. So I'm going to go to Display, turn on Garage Shading Lines. This will allow us to see our object, which is pretty cool. So I always like to work in this view so I can actually see what I'm working with. So the first thing we want to do is we want to add some caps to this, because we want the light to catch. And if we render this out now, we're going to get perfect 90-degree angles, which is not what we want. Nothing in real life has a perfect 90-degree angle. It's impossible to get that. Look around your room now. Look at something that has a sharp edge. Your desk, your monitor, anything like that, it's not actually a 90% degree angle. And it goes for the same in 3D. We want to add some caps, and we want to add fillet caps. Now when you first add these, it's going to look a little bit weird. They're going to be a bit too big, and if we render it out now, you'll see that it does actually look quite nice, but it's not what we want for this tutorial. If you want it to be like this, fair enough, have it like that. It's entirely up to you. But for the purposes of the tutorial, I'm going to try and keep it as close as possible to what we had in the preview. So I'm going to bump these down to about 1. And you can also constrain it, which is sometimes might give you funky results. So I kind of leave constrain off. Constrain basically means it's going to try constrain the original shape. When you add fillet caps, it's going to like buff it out a little bit just so it has enough room to add these caps in. So if we zoom back a little bit and we render it out now, we're going to see we're going to get some really nice highlights already on these corners. And this is just with the default lighting, and this is exactly what we want. We want the light to catch these highlights to give us some definition in our text. So that is cool. Now next thing we need to do is, once we've got everything set up, we like it, we need to make this object, this more text object, editable. So press C on your keyboard, or you can use this icon up here. C is obviously faster. So press C, and you're going to get this. You're going to get lots of items. So unfold these, and you want these like teal type green colors. You want these objects, which is your letters, so F, E, N, I, K, and Z. So grab these and pull them out of that null object, and then you can actually delete this null object. We don't actually need that. What we do need is these objects here. So select them all and press C again. That's going to make these editable. And it really depends on your text. Sometimes you might get a messy object. Sometimes you'll come out with a really nice object. We have a really nice object here, so that's awesome. And then what we want to do is we want to right click, and we want to scroll down here to unfold all. That's going to allow us to grab all of these. So select the bottom one and select the top. Now if you want these to be unique and individually cut, then you would just actually select the end cap of the F and then right click, connect objects and delete. And then that's going to add the F on its own. However, what we want to do is we want to select them all and make just one object. So I'm going to right click, connect objects and delete. And now it's made us one object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these orange triangles, because these are basically selections of our polygons. So we don't actually need them. So I'm going to delete them just to make everything a little bit tidy. And I hope you guys are following along. So what we've basically done is we've made our text, we've added the caps, and then we've made it editable. So now this is all polygons. So every single one of these are polygons, and that was the goal, because we can't actually fracture the other polygons, well, the other more text we had, so we had to make it editable, and that's what we've got. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the point mode, which is the vertices mode. I'm going to Control A to select all. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go to optimize. Now you're going to see a few things. The reason I optimize is because these objects weren't actually connected. They weren't connected because they had caps. So what optimize does, it's kind of welding them together. Now because they're on exactly the same point, we don't actually see it, but they are not connected. For example, if I just undo that, and then if I add in a MoGraph effector, a random effector, and place it under here, you should actually see that this let's see where we're going to be. I don't actually think this will work. No, I don't think it'll work, but let's just delete that. But take my word for it. These objects aren't actually connected, so we do need to connect them. So just right click, select them all of course, right click and then click optimize. This will weld them and it'll make them go a funny shape. That's because the thong shading is a bit too high, and it's given us this really smooth look. So click these two little brown balls over here. This is your thong tag, and basically you want to lower this to about 30, and when you basically apply it, everything's going to smooth out. It's going to basically keep these edges on the side smooth, but the edges that we don't want smooth, like these surfaces, these flat planes, they will actually be smooth. And you can see this if I actually just up this, you'll see them starting to change. As you can see, the surfaces, the flat surfaces start to get smoothed out, and you get this really horrible shading, which is not nice. So that's why we actually lower it to about, well, 40 in this case might do well, but I like to put it on 30. So there we go. Everything looks nice. If we render out now, we get really nice smooth edges. We've got smooth edges up here, and of course the beveled edge is obviously not smooth because we want this to catch the highlights. So that being said, we have everything there that we need, and that is pretty much done. So I hope you guys have followed along. If not, just rewind the tutorial and follow along again, and you will eventually get it. And once you've at this stage, what we want to do now is we want to basically load the Frowsy plugin. So go to plugins, Frowsy, and then click Frowsy. We don't want Boolean, building, or cutter. We just want the Frowsy. This will pop up a little window, and I'll just quickly go over the basics of this. You don't need to worry about dynamics, material, or bake because we're not going to be using them. We're just going to be using the default tab here. So the pieces, this is the number of pieces it will cut each object. Now the F is a single object, the E is a single object, etc. So the higher you go, the longer it takes to cut, and of course the more pieces you have, which then in turn actually slows your system down. So be careful with this and make sure you save. So before I do this, I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go to Save, I'm going to name this Tutorial 2. There we go. It's always good to save these because, God forbid, if your system crashes, you're going to lose all that work that you've done. And whenever you're using a plugin, or whenever you're using something that is going to create lots of polygons, especially that interact, that have dynamics on, make sure you save, because dynamics in Cinema 4D are a little bit unstable when objects start to interact and intersect each other, so just be careful with that. So I'm going to go to maybe about 20. Now the other one was 40. I fractured each object 40 times. I'm going to go a little bit lower just to make this tutorial a little bit faster for you guys. And yeah, so the pieces, we want it to be cut 20 times. It can be random, so it can actually be random cutting whenever we want. The H, P, and B will basically give you different cuts, so just leave them as default. Of course, keep randomize on. You can have a seed if you want. And that's basically it. You just want to keep everything default, just change the number of pieces, and then hit break now. Now you must select your object, so make sure you have your object selected, and then hit break. And it's going to go through and it's going to slice these up, and it's going to basically put them back in position, and it's going to apply the material as it's doing this. So it's doing a lot of things that would take you hours to do by yourself. So it's a very fantastic plugin. It's got one more to do, and then it should be done. There we go, so everything is done. We can close down Frowsy now. And let's have a look around your text. Everything should be good. You might get a little bit of imperfections somewhere. Now if we actually look at this and turn off the display, because that's going to slow us down, everything looks really fractured. However, if you render this out, everything will be perfectly in line because everything is actually 100% butted up against each other, so you can't actually see the seam. But that's not what we want. We kind of want this little fractured look where the text is fractured. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all of these dynamic tags, because if I press play now, they're all going to fall down, and it's going to lag the system, and we don't actually want dynamics here. So I'm going to delete these, and then I'm actually going to turn on all of these objects here. Now the reason they're turned off is because all the pieces are actually in here, but they're actually turned on. Now you don't need to worry about any of the stuff in here because we can actually change it down here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the inner part. I'm going to basically go to luminance, I'm going to check it on, and then this can be any colour you want. I kind of use this turquoise teal colour type thing, and then this actually depends on what you want the look to be. I normally leave it as this. If you turn off the colour, you're going to get a really flat colour. So make sure you leave the colour on, and then you get this kind of white to your colour. It's really nice. Again, you can turn specular off if you want. It doesn't really make a difference, but there you go. Now as you can see, we can see this colour bleeding through these cracks. However, if we render, you still don't see it. So once that's done, I'm going to actually load up my outer colour. Now it's already applied, so you don't have to drag it or anything. Just change the colour. I'm going to change this to a very dark black colour. Now remember, nothing in real life is fully black. It might look black, but it's not actually 100% black. You can't obtain 100% black, and you can't obtain 100% white. It's not pure white and it's not pure black. Some people think black is black and white is white, but it's not actually. There's a big article on it you can find on Google if you actually Google it. But yeah, so click OK. I'm going to make it not fully black. I'm going to make it, you know, just very dark black, because it does make a big difference. So if we render out now, this is the default lighting from Cinema 4D. So as you can see, we've got some really nice highlights on the sides here. It's looking really cool. So I'm going to add some reflection now. So check reflection on. And I'm actually going to add in the texture a Fresnel. Now what Fresnel will do, when you're looking at something dead on, it's not going to be reflective. But as it bleeds out to the sides, it's actually going to become more reflective. So I'm going to turn off specular, because specular is horrible. It's just a fake reflection, or a fake highlight rather. So I definitely don't like using that. I'm going to up the blurriness because I don't want it to be very sharp. Something like 8. Now remember, if you do add blurriness to your reflections, it's going to take a lot longer to actually render out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to basically reduce the brightness and the mix strength down, just so we get a little bit of a nicer blend between these materials, because we don't want it so, you know, in your face. We just want a subtle reflection. Now if I render out, you're not really going to see much because we don't have any lights or anything, but that's fine. So now we've got our materials set up. Now these can be any materials you want, experiment, different colours, etc. I'm going to select all these objects. I'm going to use Alt and G to actually group these. And here we go, this is our text. So what I want to do now is want to go to MoGraph, Effectors, and then go to the Random Effector. And then we're going to pull this slider down again and select all of these objects of the text. We're going to go into Effectors and we're going to drag in this Random Effector. That means it's going to affect these objects. If it isn't in here, if we actually just delete this, you see it doesn't actually take effect. Even if we put it in here, it won't take effect. So make sure you just drag it in these objects in their effectors, and then this effector will take effect to these objects. That being said, this is way too high, but if we render now, you're going to see we're going to get some really cool things. We're going to get some really nice reflections and whatnot, and it looks pretty cool. Now what we need to do is we need to go into the random effector. We're going to enable scale and rotation, and we're going to basically lower all these down to 0. Now scale and rotation will be 0, and this is where your uniqueness comes in. This is where you will be unique, and you just play around with these. How much breakage do you actually want? And it really depends. Now obviously if you go too high, things are going to look a little bit weird and you're not going to be able to read the text. So keep this low, you know, definitely below 10. I'm going to go for something like 224. Just something random. And same with the scale. Don't go too crazy. I like to just use very small numbers because subtlety is the key here. And same with the rotation. I won't go above 5 with the rotation. Something like that, just something very random and looking very, very cool. So that being said, let's maybe do this a little bit better here and maybe a little bit more. Actually a little bit less on there. And there we go. I think the E is a little bit too... There we go. So it's all about playing around with it. Once you have this and you're happy with your design, what we're going to do now is we're going to light this. And one of the things that we need to do is, of course, add some lights. So I'm going to add my first light and I'm going to change the colour. Now, the other reason I'm changing the colour right now is just to give you an example of where the colour is going to be affecting. So I'm going to make another light and I'm going to basically change this colour to something else. Now these aren't the colours I'm going to be using. They're just kind of an indicator of where the lights will be. So I'm going to move this one back, or should I say in front of this text, and I'm going to move it up. This is going to give these a really nice highlight. And depending on how powerful you want this light, you can increase or decrease. As you can see, the front of this is becoming blue. If we just do a quick render, you'll see the front of the text is actually blue. The sides here are actually like a greeny yellow colour. That's because this one needs to be pulled back a little bit. And this is kind of just highlighting the backs here, which is cool. and pull it up a little bit. And this is where you need to play around. This is where your creativity will come in. The lights really don't matter. The HDRI is the most important part here. So let's render out again, a quick render. And it looks pretty cool, okay? So let's change the color of this light to kind of match this, just to intensify it. So the blue is pretty near. So let's make something like that. And the backlight as well, let's make it not so bluey, but more of a greeny color. Like that. And we're good to go. So that I'm happy with. So what we need to do now is we need to go to this icon here. It's like a floor. Click this and go to sky. Not physical sky, just the normal sky. And then make a new material. Open this material up and go to the luminous and turn off color and specular. So check on luminous and then go to texture and then load image. And then these are all the HDRIs I have. I actually downloaded this pack. Can't remember where from, but it doesn't matter which one I use. I'm going to just pick a random one and click no. And you're going to see we're going to get this object here. So what we need to do now is we need to just render this out, and you'll see the difference this looks. But we're actually having this horrible background that we don't want to see. So what you need to do is you need to right click on your sky, go to Cinema 4D tags, and then you need to go to compositing and then uncheck scene by camera. Now when we render out, it's not going to see anything. Now this looks pretty good as it is, just with the default sky texture, but we want to add our own custom texture. Drop that on and then render out again, and you're going to see we're going to get a very different look. We're going to get some really nice highlights. The reflections are looking pretty damn sexy, I must say. And overall it looks pretty nice. Now this will all change depending on what HDRI image you use. The brighter your image is, of course, the brighter the reflections will become. So if this is too bright for you, all you need to go is go into the texture, go into the luminance, into the texture here, and just basically bring down the black point, the exposure. Bring down the exposure and it'll make it darker. So maybe -1 will do. If we render out again, you'll see it's not so pronounced, but they are still there. And it's the same if you want to make them brighter, just increase the exposure. And yeah, so I'm quite happy with that. It looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a camera in. I'm going to check this little black box here, and it will basically take me into the camera. I'm going to basically zero out the rotation, so this is dead on. And then I can just position the camera where I want. Something like that. Now what we need to do is we need to go into the render settings. I'm going to make this 1280 by 720. That's normal HD. And then I'm going to go into effects. I'm going to go into global illumination. I'm going to go into irradiance cache, and then I'm going to reduce the samples to low and the density to preview. And this is going to give you the fastest possible render with global illumination. So I'm going to pull out a little bit, and then here we are, and I'm just going to render out, and it's going to go through its process, and there we go. We have some really nice looking text now. Now it looks a little bit washed out, so what I might do is I might just increase this blue light a little bit, maybe give it a little bit of a blue tinge to it, and that looks pretty good. Now of course I could go into my my texture here, my material rather, and actually reduce the reflection down a little bit more, so it's not so pronounced, the reflections and whatnot, so it's not so bright. And yeah, I think that's pretty good. So now that we've got that, what else could we do to this? Well, of course we could add more lights, you know, add different colours and whatnot, but it's entirely up to you. What I like to do is I like to go into the render settings again and add in some ambient occlusion. This is going to give us, well, kind of fake shadows. In these cracks it's going to make it darker, so when an object would actually, you know, cast shadows, it will actually fake cast shadows. So if we render out again, you will see that now in between these cracks it gets a lot darker, and it adds a lot of depth to the actual text. So I do recommend using ambient occlusion. It's a fantastic bit of kit that comes with pretty much every 3D package. I don't think anything in like 3D films is rendered out without ambient occlusion, because it's so important. Of course, these look a little bit grainy. That's because the settings are very low. So obviously when you're rendering this out for a final render, maybe for an image, like if I were using this for a background channel, that'd be perfect for it, because you're not actually going to see all of that detail, but it does help having that detail there. Of course, you can increase these if you want, but of course the longer, well, the more details you add, the longer it will take to render out. So that being said, I think that looks pretty good, and maybe we can just up the, let's see, let's do that, maybe 2, and then just render out this in the picture viewer, and we'll see the difference between the one I created about an hour ago to the one I created just now through this tutorial, and you will see that it's not 100% exact. Why? Because nothing can exactly be what you created. Everything will be different. You'll always do something different. As you can see, this one looks more ready. The F and the E look a lot different. If I basically go on here and press A and B, and you can see if I go to compare, this is the difference between them. So you can see that the blue one is a lot smaller than the other one. Let me just turn this off and then maybe compare. Swap vert. So as you can see here, if we move this, you can see it's exactly different. This one looks a lot more shinier. It looks a lot more bluer. This one looks a lot more red. So you can see that nothing that you create will ever be the same. And it's something I tried to tell my friend the other day, that if you create something, it's near impossible to recreate it exactly unless you follow setting for setting and position for position. So if I copied the position of the lights in the exact same position and copied the exact same color codes and the shadows and everything like that, then of course you would get something that looks very similar. But if you're doing it on the fly, very impossible to recreate it. Excuse me. So yeah guys, that's the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a long one, but I think it was well worth the while. We created something pretty good. And if you've got any more suggestions that you want to give out and request any tutorials, then leave them in the comment section below, and I will catch you guys in the next tutorial. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.